It is my honor to introduce Vjosa Osmani, the President of Kosovo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy needs us as much as we need democracy. And these past few years across the globe, and especially in our continent, democracy is being tested. Regrettably, we are witnessing a relentless assault on democratic values by autocrats who view democracy as a direct threat to their ambitions. However, the stronger their desire to undermine democracy, the stronger should be our determination to protect it. I'm convinced that democracy is as strong as the will of the people to embrace it, as resilient as our determination to protect it, and as robust as our resistance against the powers that constantly want to undermine it. I'm proud to stand on this podium today to share with you a glimpse of Kosovo's history as a story of hope, a story of democracy delivering. Today, as the most thriving democracy in the Western Balkans, my country is a genuine testament to how a people's fortune can be transformed when they are afforded a path to independence, freedom, and democracy. Emerging from the ashes of a genocidal war, Kosovo's journey was indeed challenging. However, our path was always illuminated by the unwavering aspiration and commitment to peace, equality, and prosperity. So democracy lays at the very foundation of everything we do. From institutional governance to adopting laws and policies, as well as building alliances, democracy remains our guiding path. In Kosovo, we have borne witness to the stark consequences of when democracy is undermined. Therefore, we stand resolute in our commitment to safeguard our country against the return of such darkness. We recognize that the threats to our democratic values are both real and relentless, but our resolve to protect the hard-won freedoms we cherish remains unyielding. As we know, democracy is not and cannot be a standalone endeavor. It requires alliances that allow it to thrive in partnerships. The European Union, as well as NATO, today stand as some of the most pivotal alliances known in modern history. Hence, for Kosovo, a future in the Euro-Atlantic family is the reality that will fortify democracy and security at home, in our region, as well as beyond. By opening the doors of these alliances to my country, you gain a steadfast partner, one that never takes democracy and freedom for granted, and is ready to pay any price to defend them. In this endeavor, we are not asking for shortcuts. We have made enormous strides from strengthening democratic governance to battling corruption and upholding the rule of law. The Republic of Kosovo truly has turned into a front-runner reformer. In our history, we have never attacked any other country, not even once. Yet, we have always stood up to malign, destabilizing, occupying, and genocidal forces who attacked our people. And we will continue to do so for as long as it's necessary. And the reasons are very obvious. Peace is what leads to democracy, and democracy leads to prosperity. And prosperity leads to protection of human dignity. The transformational power of democracy in human lives is indispensable. So today, championing democracy in Europe inherently means standing up for a Europe whole, free, and at peace. Just as the victory of Ukraine will define our contemporary historical trajectory, so will our success in thwarting security threats in our region will be as decisive for enabling sustainable peace in the Western Balkans and Europe at large. This is not a fight for one. This is a fight for all. And with this in mind, the ambiguity surrounding Kosovo's path towards Euro-Atlantic integration creates a very risky void, ripe for exploitation by the adversaries of democracy. This uncertainty lays fertile ground for Russia and its proxies to undermine all of our collective achievements. It is imperative, now more than ever, for both NATO and the EU to apply an open-door policy for established democracies like my country, ensuring that no region remains susceptible to the disruptive schemes of Putin. So, ladies and gentlemen, achieving a peaceful, just, and democratic world is a shared responsibility, no matter how big the small the country is. Strong alliances have been and continue to be the lifeline for the defense of democracy globally. In this journey, the Republic of Kosovo will always be a force for peace in the world and your steadfast ally in the global fight for democracy. Thank you very much.
Osmani, and welcome on stage for further debate. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
President Osmani, before we start, I also want to announce that we try to make this a little interactive. So if you have questions during the debate, you can send it through the app, and I will include them in our discussion. You mentioned the situation of your country right now, but maybe give us the latest update on what the situation on the border is.
As you know, Kosovo borders Serbia, a country that not just recently, but especially recently, is proving to be a very loyal Russian proxy that is trying to play by Putin's playbook by destabilizing the Western Balkans and in turn open a new front against the West. Because obviously the spillover effect through which Russia would achieve diverting the attention of the West from Ukraine is exactly what they would need at this point. Therefore, the work that we're doing alongside our allies, because as you know, we have a NATO presence in Kosovo, to make sure that Kosovo remains safe, secure, peaceful, and stable is absolutely something that we're doing 24/7. And we've increased cooperation and coordination with our allies to make sure that every destabilizing intention at the northern border of Kosovo is thwarted successfully. Last year, we've had such an attack. It was a paramilitary attack that amounted to an act of aggression by Serbia, but we managed to immediately thwart it despite of its magnitude because we worked together with our allies. But that doesn't mean that they would not try again in the future. What it means is that we will be successful in stopping them at the very first, probably, hours.
So you mentioned the fact that the conflict in Russia and the geopolitical approach of Russia, if we call it like this, has a direct impact also on the security situation in Kosovo. Can you elaborate this a little further?
I would say not just in Kosovo, obviously in the rest of Europe, but of course Russia will try to find fertile ground for it to expand the conflict. And they try to do that in parts of Europe that are still not members of NATO, because it's easier from a security point of view to do that, which is why I believe that this talks about the indispensability of the countries of the Western Balkans who want to join NATO to actually move on as fast as possible, and for NATO, as I said earlier, to have its open door policy mean more than just words, because to be NATO for our countries means to be safe. And the more of us in the Western Balkans join, the less there will be an opportunity for Putin and its proxies like Serbia to destabilize Europe through the Western Balkans. So I think at this point it's extremely important that we quickly move on with a robust Euro-Atlantic integration agenda for those countries in the Western Balkans who actually fulfill the criteria, because we're not arguing for shortcuts. We have done our homework. We fulfilled the criteria. We need to move on for the sake of the security of the entire continent, because a destabilized Western Balkans undoubtedly will have a negative effect in the security of the rest of Europe as well.
You're not asking for a shortcut, but you're asking for a path that is clear and defined. What's your expectation towards the EU in that regard?
Absolutely. A shortcut, not, but definitely a defined path. Well, we have applied for membership in the European Union, but the application has not even been looked at yet, which is a very difficult message to swallow for the people of the Western Balkans. Because Kosovo right now, alongside a few other countries in our region, is at a 100% alignment with all of the European Union common security and defense policy decisions. We've adopted sanctions against Russia, or the first one in the region to do so, against Iran, and of course, not just the sanctions policy, but the economic policy, the rule of law reforms, and every other reform that the European Union has required of us, we've been undertaking at a very rapid rate, especially in the past 3 years. And despite of all of that, we don't see the European Union delivering in showing the people of Kosovo, at least, that there is hope, that there is a clear path, and just, telling us what else do we need to do. So they're not telling us what else we need to do. It's just there's like a block, I would say, for pure political reasons, for domestic political considerations of just a few countries. But in turn, this is endangering peace and stability in the Western Balkans. Because the more the countries will not see a clear path towards the European Union, trust me, there will never be a vacuum. Malign forces will always reach out to find a way to destabilize our part of the world. Now, Kosovo so far has been entirely free of malign influence from Russia and China, and we're the only, for example, country that is not part of the China Road and Belt Initiative. But that doesn't mean that the fact that they have influence in other countries in the region, that will not lead to more instability and lack of peace and progress in our country as well. So I think the European Union delivering in the sense that making sure that Kosovo gets a candidate status is the path forward in making sure that all the 6 countries of the Western Balkans move towards what is, I think, the only path to a Europe whole, free and at peace, which is making sure that this part of Europe also joins based on the criteria that they fulfill.
Which only works when you continue your efforts to reduce corruption in the country. You have seen success in the past 3 years, but still you're not where you should be or want to be.
Well, I do think that democracy and rule of law should never be finished projects. You should always strive for more. So yes, some historical progress has been made in the past 3 years, but we should not, feel fulfilled with what has been done, because we still need a robust vetting system for the justice system, where most of the problem lies in making sure that there is a proper rule of law and equality for all. And unless we achieve that, we should never feel like we have achieved the results that we intended when we first took office. So there's still a lot to do, but what is extremely important, that even based on democratic indices around the world, Kosovo is one of the top rule of law reformers, not just in the Western Balkans, but Europe and the world. For example, in the Democracy Summit that is led by President Biden, Kosovo has been picked from more than 100 and something countries to lead the rule of law cohort, precisely because it's championing rule of law reforms. Still a lot to do, but I think we're in the right trajectory.
Settling the tensions with Serbia is certainly one point that makes everything easier that you were just discussing. Now, you mentioned the aspect that is on Serbia's side. Let's also maybe discuss what can be on Kosovo's side. The 2022 US and EU plans would see Belgrade drop down the lobbying against Kosovo's seat in international organization, but the exchange would be creating an association of Serb majority municipalities. Do you think this is still on the table?
As far as we're concerned, it is, because we want to honor every single agreement that we've achieved as part of the EU-led dialogue. However, as in every other contract, I don't mean to oversimplify, but as in every other contract, there are two parties, and if one doesn't implement any of its parts but constantly undermines the agreement, and in the case of Serbia also publicly states that they will not implement it, that they do not accept it, then the question is there an agreement after all? So we've been asking the European Union to require both parties to implement in parallel. So we're not running away from the obligations that stem from that agreement when it comes to Kosovo, but Serbia needs to implement at the same time. And let me be more concrete here. Kosovo's main obligation from that agreement relates to the rights of minority communities, more specifically creating an association of Serb majority municipalities. But that is conditional to Serbia exercising a de facto recognition in parallel at the same time, because as it was stated by President Macron, Chancellor Scholz, and all of the leaders of the European Union. But while Serbia does the exact opposite, and they say we will never have de facto or de jure recognition, we will never allow Kosovo to get membership in any international organization. The question is, what are the safeguards that we will have, especially security safeguards, to not allow this association of Serb majority municipalities to get completely out of hand? Let's look at the problems that Bosnia is facing because of Republika Srpska. Obviously, the association that has been presented today does not resemble Republika Srpska, but we need to make sure that it's not even a distant cousin of it, so that we don't create more headaches in terms of security and stability in the Balkans for ourselves as well as our allies. So the only way how this can work, if the entirety of the agreement is implemented, not just to ask Kosovo implement all of its parts and give Serbia a green pass to get away with anything they want. So, for example, we've just applied for the Council of Europe, we've passed the first two phases successfully, and now we're being told, well, you need to implement the association, while when we ask, okay, will Serbia do its implementation in parallel at the same time, which means voting in favor of Kosovo in the Council of Europe, well, no one is asking them to do that. So I think as long as there's this complete lack of balance, it's really destroying the credibility of the dialogue and is making many in Kosovo question, well, if there's only one party that is going to implement, what's the point of having an agreement? What's the point of having a dialogue? If that was the case, then, why do we sit with Serbia and sign these agreements? So, I mean, the point is that we've offered to sign this agreement, the so-called German-French proposal, the EU proposal, plenty of times. Serbia never wanted to sign it. I mean, the Serbian president says, I have pain in my right hand and then I have pain in my left hand. So now I'm going to have pain for the next couple of years. I'm not going to sign it. And then the Serbian prime minister in the EU Western Balkan summit, where I participated as well, in front of all of the leaders said, we will not implement this agreement. And then she sent a letter confirming the same. And no EU leader, no EU member state or EU leader in that room said, what do you mean you're not going to implement it? You accepted it. If you accepted, based on the Vienna Convention and the law of the treaties, you don't necessarily need a signature. So if you accepted it, how come now you're retreating and withdrawing from it? But no one is talking to them in that way. Everyone is coming to us and telling us, doesn't matter what Serbia does, you have to implement it unilaterally. Well, we would if there was no security risk from this association of Serb majority municipalities. We would if we had not known the history of Republika Srpska and how, in fact, in 1991, it started as an association of Serb majority municipalities and it ended to the Frankenstein-Dodik Republic that we all know of today.
But how else, if not through the municipalities, would you secure the security of the Serbian minorities in northern Kosovo?
In fact, that association achieves the exact opposite fine, we've accepted it and we will honor our obligations, but that doesn't mean that we agree that it's a good idea for the minorities. In fact, Kosovo has right now, as we speak, the most advanced system and the most advanced constitutional protections for its minorities in the continent of Europe. I mean, in how many of your countries, a minority of 3 to 4% have a veto of any constitutional amendment, have 20 guaranteed seats in the parliament, have a veto over any legislative change related to human rights, religious rights, education rights, reforming the system on elections and so on and so forth. I haven't found any such other country that affords such rights to the minority communities. We have created 10 additional municipalities for the Serbs to lead, and we have created the most decentralized system of rights for the municipalities that exists in Europe based on Council of Europe standards, and we've also went above and beyond. So they do have this system through which they are protected. And now what Serbia is asking is so that we create an association of municipalities where they are all gathered and they are led by a president, which Vučić will be very easy to control. So what Serbia wants is not rights for minority communities. In fact, I've been in politics for more than 2 decades. I've participated in negotiations for Kosovo's status under Ahtisaari, and I've really been following the dialogue. Never over these years did Serbia put on the table a proposal that relates to the human rights and freedoms of the Serb community in Kosovo. All that they ever wanted are solutions that could lead afterwards to territorial divisions of Kosovo. So they are after the territory, not after the human rights. So I think the system that we afford right now to the minority communities protects them more than the association, which allows Vučić to have an instrument through which they would undermine our sovereignty and territorial integrity, try to destroy us from within, as they are trying to do with Bosnia. However, this is a solution that was put in the table and was really insisted upon by our allies. We've accepted it, and of course, as I said, we will implement it in line with our constitution as long as Serbia implements at the same time, because this de facto recognition and membership of Kosovo in international organizations would create some sort of safeguards for Kosovo as an independent and sovereign country, even after we create the association of majority municipalities.
Very short answer to the end, with the demand for a very, very short question, with a demand for a very short answer at the end. If you wish a year where Kosovo could be part of the European Union, what's your year?
Well, I would say definitely by 2030. I would look into, even if we look right now at the level of compliance with acquis communautaire, standards on rule of law, democracy and human rights, Kosovo is well advanced compared to every other country in the Western Balkans, and we shouldn't shy away to say that. Based on that, I would say between 2028 to 2030 is what Kosovo deserves. That doesn't mean that that's what I expect the EU to deliver, but I think if the EU would truly start to think about its own long-term security and stability, it would really work into bringing those democracy-prone, rule-of-law-prone countries closer to itself, and make sure that those who do not respect democracy and rule of law do not get the EU cash either.
President Vjosa Osmani, thank you very much for your
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.